You shows, movies, and specials that will entertain or build up your family, we're committed to honoring God by making them both biblically sound and of the highest quality possible. Check us out at AmericanFamilyStudios.net.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. If you're on Social Security and you're waiting to see what the cost of living increase will be, you're going to have to be patient. The ongoing government shutdown has delayed the announcement of the annual increase. The shutdown began earlier this month, with Democrats and Republicans pointing the finger at one another. The people and politicians of Illinois are still opposed to ICE and its efforts to go after illegal immigrants. Fox's Todd Pirro has more.
Illinois Democrat Governor J.B. Pritzker blasting federal agents for using tear gas to disperse violent crowds of anti-ICE rioters. Pritzker saying, quote, ICE is recklessly throwing tear gas into our neighborhoods and busy streets. The Trump administration must stop their deployment of dangerous chemical weapons into the air of peaceful American communities. But those protests were anything but peaceful. Prior to the deployment of the tear gas, Chicago police were trying to de-escalate an anti-ICE mob when people in the crowd began getting violent. Chicago PD confirming the incident, saying, quote, individuals began throwing objects at the federal agents, at which point the federal agents deployed tear gas into the street. Now, this mob began to form after the arrest of two illegal migrants that DHS says rammed their vehicle into a Border Patrol SUV and then attempted to flee the scene. The driver and the passenger involved in the pursuit were Venezuelan nationals who entered the country illegally. The driver, an ICE fugitive, who was ordered to be removed in August of last year. Once the two were taken into custody, that crowd began to form. DHS saying, quote, the incident is not isolated and reflects a growing and dangerous trend of illegal aliens violently resisting arrest and criminals ramming cars into our law enforcement officers.
L.A. County officials have declared a state of emergency that gives them the power to provide assistance for residents they say have suffered financially from ongoing federal immigration raids. The move would allow the L.A. County Board of Supervisors to provide rent relief for tenants who've fallen behind as a result of the crackdown on illegal immigration. Opponents argue the raids do not meet the criteria of an emergency and that it could be unfair to landlords. Gen Z often gets a bad reputation, but a former Turning Point USA member turned podcaster says young people care about this country, and the reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination proves it. Isabel Brown made these comments on Fox and Friends.
You know, Gen Z gets a bad reputation for whatever reason. We're often called too young to know what we're talking about, that we're too leftist and woke and bought into all of the lies of the world. I don't see it that way, and I know Charlie didn't as well. Generation Z has an incredible weight on our shoulders, really to save Western civilization from the lies and the upside-down woke leftism that we grew up in and we've been living through. Young people today are kind of universally wise beyond our years because we've had to, but we all got a really strong wake-up call this last month to understand that life is incredibly short. We are not afforded the luxury of 100 plus years to accomplish everything we know we can and to run the race that God has set before us. We may only get 31 years. So to know that tomorrow we can take the opportunity to wake up and live every day like it's our last, to tell the truth, even if our lives depend on it, and to try to make this world a little bit more like the next one, that is truly the greatest commission we each could receive. And I hope and pray that we continue to pick up that microphone in Charlie's honor in whatever sphere of influence we have.
President Donald Trump awarded Charlie Kirk the Medal of Freedom yesterday. Charlie's widow, Erica, accepted the medal.
Charles James Kirk was a visionary and one of the greatest figures of his generation. He was truly an amazing figure and growing leaps and bounds. Charlie grew Turning Point into the largest conservative youth organization in the entire country. He forged a personal bond with countless young conservatives. He fought for free speech, religious liberty, strong borders, and a very strong and proud America. In everything he did, he put America first. He really put America first.
In final news, another reason to play those brain games and apps and puzzle books. A new clinical trial says such games may improve focus and attention. Find more news on afn.net. Thanks for listening.
Some Christians wonder if boycotting businesses is really biblical, and that's a fair question. Ed Vitagliano and M.D. Perkins address that subject in depth in the AFA Cultural Institute video, Stewardship in Action, The Power of the Boycott. They share the purpose of boycotts and show how they can impact the culture. We're giving that DVD to you free as our thanks for supporting AFA this month. Go to afa.net today for more details. afa.net.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon this week, although I do think that Tim will be in the captain's chair for Trivia Friday. He'll be returning back from the Boston tour, a spiritual heritage tour up in the Boston area. I think he will be back for Trivia Friday. And so you can look forward to hearing the master on Trivia Friday. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning there.
And Tony Vitagliano. We got him back in today. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning.
And Chris Woodward is with us this morning as the opening news guy. Good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
By the way, at 10:30, Jenna Ellis will be on the show, and we're going to be talking to her about the influence of Qatar or Qatar. I don't know why we have to keep changing the pronunciations of places, but the influence of Qatar on the West, and a lot of money flowing to influence the West, and we're going to be talking to Jenna about that. Of course, she's host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, that many of you already listen to, and host of the On Demand podcast found at afr.net. But that won't be till 10:30. And in the meantime, we have other news that Chris brings unto us.
Yes. Well, people continue to be very optimistic about this reported peace deal between Israel and Hamas, but others are still saying things like Hamas is a terrorist group. I don't believe anything they see or say, that kind of thing. Let's begin with the positive news here. For a change. Oftentimes I bring in death, crime, and destruction. So I'm going to begin with the positive stuff, and I'm going to ask for Trey Ying's talking about the various celebrations that are ongoing in Israel today. Clip 1.
The mood is a mood of elation across Israel following this successful peace agreement that led to the release of 20 living hostages. The Israeli people waited for more than 2 years, and they were promised back during the Biden administration that this war would come to an end, that negotiators would find a solution. And it just didn't happen. And it dragged on and on until President Trump sent his Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, with a mission to get the deal across the finish line. And so there has been a mood of celebration. Last night, there was the end of the Jewish holiday of Sukkot with a holiday called Simchat Torah. And you could see in the streets of Tel Aviv, people were dancing. They were holding Torahs. And it was a mood that we'd not seen here since the October 7th massacre. And you do get this sense of relief among the Israeli people because they've been waiting for this moment. And so there are still difficult days ahead. You heard reminders from the families of the hostages who came out saying, don't give up yet. There are still 21 bodies being held by Hamas. But there's an understanding that the Middle East has entered into a new chapter. And despite the challenging days ahead and the challenges that will come with trying to implement phase 2 of this broader peace plan, there is hope in the Middle East for the first time in so long.
Well, Fred, we have been talking about this this week, and I think it is possible for us to separate and put into different boxes our feelings about what's happening in the Middle East. Some people are completely pessimistic about this peace plan ever coming to fruition or lasting long. Some people are guardedly optimistic, but good grief, I think we can all agree that the 20 being released is a absolute winner on the part of Donald Trump. I mean, this has been going on for 2 years. There have been other attempts to get some of these hostages released. Some have kind of been trickled out, but finally, as far as we know, all the living hostages are home with their families and friends. And as we said earlier in the week, that is a good thing, regardless of what else we think might be coming down the road.
Oh, absolutely. And if you've watched some of the reports coming out of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv over the last 48 hours or so, as these families are being reunited with those husbands, brothers, sons who have been held captive now for over 2 years. And to hear their cries of joy, you cannot help but celebrate with them. And we can only imagine what they have faced. And I think I related the other day watching one of these reunions, and it involved a mom whose son was seen digging his own grave back there several months ago. The moment that she saw, after he was gone through a medical procedure to make sure everything's okay, when she embraced him, and I noticed like her eyes had deep rings underneath, like a woman that hasn't slept very well for 2 years, finally embracing him, and not even words. Just noise coming, sounds coming from her heart and, her soul, and being able to see her son again. He survived, and that's being repeated over and over again. Can you imagine now as these hostages reunited with their families, they're going back to their homes that they haven't seen for a while. Some of these hostages, dads who are able to embrace their kids for the first time in 2 years. So, of course, yes, we can celebrate all of this. And at the same time, we know the fabric of Hamas.
Right.
If anybody thinks that terrorism is done in the Middle East, think again. That is just not going to happen.
Well, they were executing people within Gaza.
Yes.
That they thought, Hamas thought had either cooperated with Israel or, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, who were part of rival factions.
That's
who
correct.
might want to politically be in charge of Gaza in whatever step down the road in this peace plan they might be under. They were killing people in the street.
Yes.
So there's no doubting the nature of what the world is dealing with in terms of Gaza and Hamas. Tony, I just want to make mention of one thing. Comment if you'd like. What Fred is talking about and what I've been seeing over the last couple of days and reading, it struck me how national this sense of relief is. It's not just the people who have loved ones coming back, their own personal tie to these hostages. There's a response on the part of the nation, and I think back about 9/11, how our nation was touched and people responded. I find this interesting, and I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but people groups and nations feel things as a community a lot of times. And, they respond that way after Pearl Harbor. You and I were talking about Pearl Harbor earlier in the week. We were talking about some of these kinds of issues. 9/11, people responded. I forget what President Bush's approval rating soared into the 90s. Same thing with his father after the first Gulf War. People feel things corporately a lot of times. And I just found that interesting. I don't know if anybody else does. The fact that Fred was talking about how the whole nation has responded, even though they are not all connected to the individuals released.
Yeah, I think that's a normal human reaction to get some relief, getting some relief from such a just a dark time that they're still in. Really, we are just as humans, we are just not conditioned to experience those types of horrors and to live under those types of shadows for such prolonged periods of time. And I think that's what the people in the nation of Israel have been doing. They've just, it's probably, infiltrates their daily conversations, their daily news cycle, their daily thoughts about what happened on October 7th in 2023, and then, what's going on in Gaza and, working towards this deal. So I can't imagine just that sense of oppression. I was pretty young. The closest thing I would have to relate to would be 9/11.
Right.
But I was pretty young when that happened, so I understood the gravity of it, but I was still a child in a lot of ways. So I just can't imagine living under that cloud of oppression. It was not God's design. And so anytime a people can get some relief, some light, some hope, it's going to lift their spirits. And I think that's what we're seeing nationally across Israel.
Yeah.
In terms of Hamas, many people are saying, well, this is only phase 1. There's phase 2, 3, onward, so on. And all that is going to depend on Hamas, which is a terrorist group, giving up their arms, giving up territory that they're holding on to there in Gaza. President Trump says Hamas has no other choice but to disarm. Clip 3.
We have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm or we will disarm them. Got it?
Well,
he did not expand in terms of who is they and we.
Well, he used the pronoun we.
Yeah.
So that tells me, I would love a follow-up question.
Right, yeah.
You said we, Mr. President. Does that mean American forces in Gaza?
Well, of course, now this has been kind of percolating over the last 24 hours or so. Whenever this was this last night? This wasn't this morning.
It was last night because they aired the clip this morning on Fox and Friends.
Yeah. So this is people are going to be thinking about this. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that President Trump does shoot from the hip. Okay, that's just his personality. Mm-hmm. He's he comes from a CEO background. You're the CEO of, whatever, I don't know, Trump Enterprises or whatever. And you're used to people coming and say, hey, we get this problem, and you just make the decision. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to be questioned because you're the CEO. And so I think sometimes President Trump responds that way when someone says, well, what if Hamas doesn't? He's going to respond in that kind of mentality. No, they are going to disarm. So I don't know, Fred, Tony, I'm not sure what to make of that. He did say we. I don't know whether that means he is going to commit U.S. forces to help Israel in Gaza, or he's talking in the kind of royal we of been in discussions with Benjamin Netanyahu, and we meaning the West, the pro, freedom forces will get it done. I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
I think there's a great deal of celebration, and President Trump deserves a lot of credit for, as we've just been talking about, the release of these 20 hostages. But a lot of people are saying the hard part is yet to come.
Right.
And the hard part is, what do you do with Hamas terrorists who they're willing to die for their cause?
Right.
And so what happens to them? I mean, are they going to be identified and shipped somewhere? What country wants them? My feeling is that Hamas, just as you were alluding to, as of yesterday, was shooting people in the streets of Gaza, that they declare the enemy. So I don't think an armed Hamas terrorist group is going away. Now, what does that mean politically? I don't think President Trump would have U.S. troops in Gaza, but I think they would give the strongest support possible to the IDF. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, we'll take care of that ourselves.
Yeah.
He has said that. If the Hamas doesn't abide by this peace plan, which part 2 is for Hamas to disarm, we don't know what the time frame that President Trump and Netanyahu are giving Hamas, but that has to happen soon because there are 18 other parts to this peace plan.
Right.
And this is the next part.
Well, Tony, I not only don't want to see U.S. troops involved in Gaza, but I think it backfires if President Trump tries to send it.
Yeah.
You can't have U.S. troops in Gaza killing Arabs,
No.
okay, because these other Muslim nations, these other Arab nations, I think there's an understanding that you attack Israel, you pay the price for that. That's got nothing to do with the United States going over there and killing Palestinians. And I think that if that's what President Trump has in mind, I think that backfires and throws the entire Middle East into chaos.
Yeah, no, I agree. The most I think Trump should commit to is what we've been doing, which is military weapons, aid, assistance, as far as that goes, to directly help the IDF. Look, I don't like to call shots very often, but if I had to guess, I would say that part 2 of this peace plan, and in my opinion, Netanyahu and the IDF probably knows this is going to happen. Part 2 will likely start to disintegrate. I don't mean to be the pessimist here, and the end result will be Israel having to go in and occupy Gaza just to clear out the remnants of Hamas, because Trump has done everything he can do diplomatically and working out deals with some of these surrounding nations, isolating Hamas. I mean, they are living in a rubble pile with no discernible means of resupply and rearmament, and they're still refusing to concede. So to me, the end result of this is probably going to be some form of occupation, but that should be done by the IDF.
Right.
The U.S. should have no military presence.
And to your point, which I got to say is probably what's going to happen. To your point, though, Israel could say, listen, we had a peace plan in place.
Yeah.
We're trying to be reasonable here.
Yeah.
The rest of you, countries surrounding us, you see what we're up against here, and now we have no choice. But
Yeah.
One difficult thing may be for the U.S. and the world to identify who is a Hamas terrorist. And I say that based on an interview that Fred and I saw this morning on Fox and Friends. They brought on a video of a guy named Eli Sharabi. I hope I pronounced his name correctly, but Eli Sharabi talked about how a number of Hamas terrorists are actually working professionals from white-collar and blue-collar backgrounds. And clip 6.
Our captors as well, some of them been teachers, some of them used to work in IT, some of them were electricians, some of them were doctors. And of course, they are brainwashed with jihad, extreme, jihad, that the worst they can be. And we are not surprised about that at all.
The reason I wanted to play that is because if Gaza becomes a so-called Palestinian state, these people could theoretically just assimilate into that society under the career they had before they became a terrorist, and then they just reorganize, maybe under a different name, or they take up arms again.
Well, Fred, I was just going to say, I found this fascinating because I have a tendency, I'll speak for myself, I have a tendency to think of terrorists as being like werewolves.
Yeah.
Okay, they just turn into something monstrous. But this clip indicates these are just normal people who are in agreement with a horrifying ideology.
Yes. By the way, Eli Sharabi was held hostage for over 400 days. So he lived with these people.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're hearing testimony from a hostage and how he was treated by these people who are teachers, medical doctors. And that's why we wanted to play that clip, because a lot of people may have in their minds a terrorist is just a local thug who couldn't do anything else.
Right.
No, these are very intelligent people. Dear knows where they got their medical degree. They may have got a medical degree from the United States.
Yeah, they're not picking up delinquent youths off the street.
No.
Right? Recruiting them to their cause who have no other means of making a living. These are people who are intelligent,
yes,
educated,
yes,
and Hamas is able to rope them into their cause.
Yeah, radicalize them if you want to call it that.
yeah, and to be trained killers.
Yeah.
and to see the Jews as subhuman.
Yes.
We all know that's how you wind up
Right.
getting people collectively to kill other human beings.
Yeah.
Is you prove to people or you convince people that the target are subhuman.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Americans did this to Indians. That's how you justify taking their lands. It just so people don't think I'm woke. The various Indian tribes did it to one another.
Right.
This tribe over here, they're subhuman. They're beneath us. We're going to get rid of them. This is human nature, but it is the logical steps that must be taken to overcome human hesitancy to take life. Okay? Most of our listeners probably have never punched someone in the face really hard in a fight. Okay? We're not really built to enjoy that, let alone kill someone.
Yeah.
And let alone kill women and children.
Right.
In order to overcome that human hesitancy, you've got to convince people in their hearts and their minds that your targets are subhuman. And this is why I said on the show that I am earlier in the week, I am thankful for these hostages being released. I am guardedly optimistic that they might have 4 or 5 years of peace. If they can get something, they can swing that deal. But ultimately, I'm pessimistic because the view I just expressed, that ideology in Hamas, it's not just in Hamas. It's in whoever takes their place if Hamas goes away. It's in ISIS. It's in Hezbollah. It's in Iran.
That's right.
And you don't get rid of that with missiles or with weapons.
And these were people, so devoted to the cause that when October 7th happened, everybody in Hamas, you had to know it's coming. I mean, the hammer's coming down like never before. But they're the
From
ones
Israel,
who jumped
you mean?
by Israel. Yes.
Yeah.
They're the ones who went into the tunnels with them. It would be one thing if you if some of these people join with Hamas just to preserve their own families, these are the guys in charge, I support, Hamas, whatever, death to Israel, blah, blah, blah. But then when the bombs start dropping, you abandon it, and you're out for your own survival. These people went into the tunnels with the hostages and were torturing them and, committing all sorts of atrocities against them. So, yeah, that is a mindset that, again, we talked about this earlier in the week. I don't think very few people in the West can even begin to understand.
Yeah. It's interesting. They don't value life.
No.
These Hamas terrorists don't even value the lives of their fellow Palestinians.
Right.
No.
Because Hamas at any point over the last 2 years could have put the white flag up.
Yes.
And it would have been over. It would have been over. But they were willing to see their own people, thousands of them, die rather than surrender.
They watched the entire city be made into a parking lot.
Yeah.
And never once.
Well,
conceded.
and that's because the ideology that drives Hamas looks at their own people as valuable cannon fodder.
Yeah.
This is in the service of Allah and jihad, and it doesn't matter if innocent Muslims die. It's in the service of a greater cause.
The rockets in the schools.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is part of what that ideology teaches, is that you should be willing to die for the cause of jihad. And then when I've seen these people interviewed, maybe not here in the last 2 years, but previously, they're asked, well, what about is innocent people in Europe dying when a bomb goes off? And they say, there are no innocent infidels.
Yeah.
If you die because you refuse to submit to Allah, your death is justified. We'll be right back, folks. Hope you join us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. Those are words of Paul. He was a lad in the town of Cremona, Italy, in the middle of the 17th century. Cremona was a musical town, and great acclaim was given to those who could sing or play. Wanting to be accepted and given some recognition for his musical talents, he tried singing. His friends called him Squeaky Voice, and he soon realized that his singing would never be anything special. The young lad then tried to learn to play, but his success wasn't much better than his singing. So he was a dejected youngster as he walked through the streets of Cremona with his friends and listened to their beautiful voices. About the only thing the lad could do was to whittle on a block of wood with his knife. One day he was sitting on the edge of a street whittling as three of his friends played and sang beautiful songs for the people passing by. Appreciating the musical ability of his friends, many people dropped some small coins into their hands to reward them for their efforts. One gentleman stopped longer than many of the others and even asked the friends to sing a song again. After they finished, he dropped a coin into the hand of the singer. Then he moved on down the street. Upon looking, the boys discovered that it was a gold coin. It was quite a piece of money to give to a street singer. But the man who gave it could afford to do so. "Who was he?" asked the lad who whittled. "It was Amante," his friend with the beautiful voice replied. "Amante who?" asked the lad. "Niccolo Amante," the friend replied. "He's the greatest violin maker in all of Italy." That evening at home the lad thought about the man by the name of Niccolo Amante. He was a man who succeeded in the musical field, but he neither sang nor played. The more he thought about the violin maker, the more he became convinced that he wanted to become a violin maker. He wanted to become the best violin maker in all of Italy. Well, early the next morning, the lad hurried off to the home of Niccolo Amante. He sat on the doorstep and waited for the great violin maker to come out. When Amante came out, the lad told him that he wanted to become a violin maker and asked Amante if he'd teach him how to make violins. He explained to Amante that he couldn't sing or play, but that he could whittle. And more than anything else, he wanted to make violins. Amante accepted the young lad as a pupil. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, the young man studied from the master. In due time, his work became known in Cremona and then Italy and finally throughout the whole world. You know, we may not have the talent to do some things as well as other people, but God has given us all a very special talent, which, if we will develop, can help us help others. Antonio Stradivari found this to be true. Even to this very day, men still make music with his violins, and they pay upwards of $100,000 to do so. Just because you can't sing or play doesn't mean you can't make music.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." Matthew 19, verse 14.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
And welcome back to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano's sitting in for Tim Wildmon this week, at least today and tomorrow. I think Tim will be back Friday for Trivia Friday. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson, Tony Vitagliano, and Chris Woodward. And now from a remote bunker in an undisclosed location, we want to welcome Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, heard weekdays at 7 a.m. Central Time on AFR, and host of the on-demand podcast that you can find at afr.net. Jenna, good morning to you.
Good morning. And, you know, you'd think that I'm hunkered down with, like, Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin and all of them, but no, it's just Todd and Copper.
Todd and Copper, the dogs. Now,
Yes.
when you mention their name, do their ears perk up? Or they
do, yes, but we actually went to the dog park for a little bit before this, so they are well rested and just laying here at my feet in the bunker.
That's in the bunker. Well, that's why we raised our kids. When we didn't want them to, act up, we just took them to the park and just ran them till they were exhausted.
I thought you were going to say you took Tony in a bunker.
No. Hey, listen, glad you could join us, and we wanted to talk to you. I don't know. We may toss an issue or two in addition to this. I don't know. Depends how quickly we move through it, but. You had sent some articles to some of us in news. I might have been over the weekend about Qatar or Qatar. This is frustrating to me, is having two pronunciations for every place in the Middle East. First of all, how do you pronounce it?
I say Qatar, but
Qatar.
I've heard it both ways. So.
Okay. All right, it used to be Qatar.
Tomato.
Tomato. We just got through before the break. I'm sure you were listening just with intensity to our conversation. No, you may just now be tuning in. We were talking about ideologies, and especially with regards to Hamas. When we're dealing with the ideology of Islam, which is not just a religious worldview, it is a worldview that encompasses politics and whether people groups should be allowed to survive and all those kinds of things. It really is difficult to separate having, trade relations with a country like Qatar or Saudi Arabia and separating that from the way they view the world. You believe that Qatar is actively working to undermine the West, even while we at times can get certain deals worked out with them. Why don't you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, and that's a great introduction because you're absolutely right that Islam is not just a religion, it's a belief system. And similarly, Christianity is not just a faith or religion, it is a belief system. It is a lens by which we view the world. And for Christians who say, well, I want to just proclaim Jesus in my church and he's in my heart, but then I can go out and think however I want on politics or not even engage in politics because it's dirty, it's whatever, then I would submit that if you are saying that, you don't really understand what Christianity actually is. And similarly, I think a lot of people in America don't actually understand what Islam is. That Islam is a whole belief system. It's not just a faith that they profess quietly. If you do not subscribe to the tenets of the Islamic faith, then you are by definition an infidel that deserves death. And this is why they commit jihad. And so this is where when they have Sharia law, this isn't just a political belief. It is a whole system by which those who are Islamic countries, their law and politics reflect that worldview. And so why does this matter to us? Well, Qatar, which is an Islamic country, they fund Islamic networks and clerics that suppress Christianity and glorify extremism. They support that ideology, not the Christian faith. And while here in America, yes, we have the First Amendment. You are free to believe, to practice your faith. We have, obviously, Muslims in this country. That's okay. Our system, and I mean, as Christians, we would say, well, come into a saving knowledge of God, obviously. But in terms of what our state does, our state law and politics reflects a Christian biblical worldview. That's why we are a Christian nation. But Qatar has sought to undermine that. They fund media networks and movements that despise the very freedoms that they exploit. They are using our platforms to undermine our civilization, and they're doing it primarily in our universities. You wonder why the universities have gone so woke. It's because since 1981, Qatar has poured billions into American universities, not out of philanthropic causes, but specifically to buy the young minds of the West. This is a Maoist tradition that if you indoctrinate the young people then you don't even have to wage war in a traditional sense. You will then occupy the territory because the young people's minds will have been captured. So I wrote a piece for Town Hall, and I'll just close with this. It's titled, How Qatar is Buying the Minds of the West. And that was last week in Town Hall, and you can go and read it there, How Qatar is Buying the Minds of the West.
Jenna, Fred here. I agree with everything that you've said, which is puzzling to a lot of folks then as to why President Trump would trust them as part of this deal. And I mean, our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, within 24 hours of all of this, earlier this week, opening a portion of our air base, I believe in Idaho, to the Qataris to help them train on their F-15s. Why do you suppose he's willing to trust them?
Because he is the art of the deal, and he believes that negotiation ultimately prevails. I mean, even if you all heard him yesterday at the Medal of Freedom ceremony for Charlie Kirk, which of course then became a Trump rally, like everything does that Trump speaks at, he was talking about how we have worked with so many countries to foster peace, and he genuinely believes that you can negotiate with terrorists. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And so he believes that as long as you negotiate, that these people actually want the same things that we do. And the problem with that, and what is ultimately going to undermine that position, and I think this is maybe his biggest blind spot in terms of, because he's an excellent negotiator, he's accomplished things that nobody thought possible, but to suggest that somehow these people want to approach the table because they care about their businesses, they care about financing, they care about families, and the values that we do is just simply false. They care about pushing their ideology. They're actually better evangelists for their own cause than sometimes we are. So the whole Qatari executive order on safety and possibly sending our troops and boots on the ground is absolutely puzzling. And in my view, the base of MAGA has not raised their voices loud enough to question that and to push back on that, because it's absolutely mind-boggling why this country that enforces strict control at home but funds ideology that erodes family and faith here in America is being treated like an ally.
Hey, it's Chris here. Since the passing of Charlie Kirk, since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a lot of young people have been inspired to get educated and to speak out on these and other issues. Taking that into account, what should we do to make sure these young people know as much as you do on this issue as they're in school or about to go to school?
Yeah, this is where I'm a huge advocate for homeschooling. And I know that that's not available necessarily as a choice to every family. I mean, it is legally, but in terms of just the practical means. But even if you can't homeschool, parents are still responsible for the discipleship of their children. And we see the studies that show that huge percentages of even children who are raised in a Christian home lose their faith when they go to college. And why is that? Because they're not prepared to confront the ideology that is present at so many universities across the country. And so what Charlie Kirk did was actually go to those universities and confront those ideologies head on and actually answer those questions. And I think we need to continue to take up that mantle and to prepare our children, and my parents did that with me. They discipled me and my brothers. They took that incredibly seriously, and they said, if there's one thing that our children have to understand and be proficient in before they graduate our household, it is in their faith and the Word of God. And that rock solid faith and understanding the scriptures and knowing and having a defense of my faith before I went to college, before I confronted ideologies outside of my parents' home, after I was an adult, that grounded me enough that I was not taken captive by those false ideologies. So I think it is incumbent upon parents, before your kids are 18 and they leave your home, that is the number one calling. And if your kids are already older or, they're already out of the home, these need to be the questions that we meet those questions with answers And I mean, even tonight, I'm going to my church to be part with my pastor of the youth group at our church that's in high school, and we're having an open Q&A where they can ask any questions. And this is so great. You'll love this, Chris. I got a couple of the questions in advance that students had submitted, and some of these are just amazing because they're asking questions like, well, why does the Bible, or why do you believe that swearing is actually a sin? You know, and you can tell by those questions what students are hearing, and then what they're hearing from the world, and that clash. And so I'm really excited to go do that at my church. Charlie did that at universities. And I think we need to have more adults who are proficient in the things of Christ to go and meet young people where they're at, take their questions, and have loving answers.
Jenna, last question. You mentioned earlier when you first came on that some of these radical Islamic ideologies are in the United States. You have imams who are preaching this kind of stuff. You have Qatar paying for college kids and people who interact with them to promote their ideology. I don't know how to exactly to phrase this. What can we legally do with a First Amendment that is being used and abused by people who are taking advantage of our freedoms in order to undermine the very document that grants those freedoms?
Well, the First Amendment doesn't give license to foreign funding to our universities. I mean, Congress can still legislate and cut off a lot of this foreign funding from Qatar and China, by the way.
Right.
And they should do that. But the problem with it is that the uniparty that's in D.C. is benefiting from all of this foreign money. I mean, the same exact problem, and I was talking about it on air this morning on my show, that the problem is the exact same problem that we have with federalism, that the federal government is giving so much money to the state governments that now the state governments are beholden to the federal government, where our Constitution provides for federalism and it shouldn't be that way. But the states don't want to give up the money, while the federal government doesn't want to give up the foreign money. And so it's up to Congress to actually legislate and say, you know, you can come here and debate in the public square. Have more speech is good speech. We will show and prove the falsity and the depravity of your ideology. But and that's fine, you know, debate in the public square, but you can't give billions of dollars to these institutions to pay for that ideology for the purposes of indoctrination.
All right, so let me just ask I said one more question. Forgive me. I didn't intend to lie. Quick follow-up, okay?
I should be like Katie Porter, ending the interview now. I'm sorry. No follow-ups.
Yeah.
Come on.
Get out of my shot.
Yeah.
All right. So how in the world are I understand what you're saying. Totally agree with it about Congress saying no to foreign money. How do we expect the fox that's guarding the hen house to put up a fence to keep the fox out?
Replace the fox. And that's what we have consistently and persistently tried to do with good policy that has to be supported by good people. And when you look at the people that are in office right now who call themselves conservatives and who maybe are a part of the Republican Party, but they're Republican in name only, right? And the Republican Party is the party that is supposed to be advancing conservatism. A lot of these people won't do it because they're just as bad as the Democrats on the other side. And so if we're actually serious about our people in office actually making headway on behalf of we the people, and we're responsible for our government, we can't just sit on the sidelines, especially when it comes to primaries, because that's the best opportunity that we have to choose the best candidate. And we need to also have better candidates. And I know it's a huge thing to run for office, but we need to have better people. And for the people who can donate to these campaigns, a lot of times the only difference between having, the rhino for 47 terms versus the new, better, pastor who's willing to run for office is funding.
Ed had his last question, Jenna.
I lied. Now Fred's going to lie.
Jenna, there's a story out there this morning. The headline is Trump administration revokes visas of 6 foreigners accused of mocking Charlie Kirk. As a constitutional lawyer, you're certainly familiar with the First Amendment. The reason they're being told to leave the country, they were critical of Charlie Kirk. They voiced an opinion against Charlie Kirk. The administration is saying that's enough to revoke your visa. You're out of here. Does the First Amendment protect people who may be critical of a Charlie Kirk? And is it wise for the government to say you're out of here because you expressed an opinion that we don't agree with?
Well, my opinion on it is that the government should be able to revoke a visa for any reason at any time. I mean, this is the same way as having a guest in your home. If they say something you don't like, you can kick them out. And it's no different when it's the government just because we have a First Amendment that they're able, to express opinions. The First Amendment and all of our laws and due process are supposed to primarily protect citizens. And so there is a different view of people who are here visiting. Now, the State Department did not say exactly what type of visa, and so whether or not there can or will be legal challenges to that, will depend. But in terms of the propriety of this, I mean, if you have someone who's coming into our country as a visitor, and then they express and applaud a violent act, absolutely, they should be out of our country. There in no sane country should we say, well, we're all for freedom of speech, so it's fine as long as that you glorify violence, as long as you are obeying the laws, because glorifying violence leads to the very ideologies that permeated the young 22-year-old who pulled the trigger anyway. So I'm all for deportation of these people.
Okay.
Well said, and I will tell you, you changed my mind on this issue. I had concerns about it, but I like your analogy of being a guest. That is different than kicking a family member out for saying the wrong thing. So well done. That's why we have bright people on the show.
I rest my case.
Yes.
And let this be a lesson, Ed, for Thanksgiving.
Yes.
If someone comes to your house and you can say, hey, you're a guest, I might deport you.
You've given half the country the right to go, you know what, Aunt, whatever, I don't like you, get out.
And now the revelation is growing up, I could have said a lot more than I did because I was a family member, not a guest. So
there you
I
go.
was imbued with rights I didn't even know I had.
That's right. You
should have consulted a lawyer.
There you go. Oh man, yeah, that's a good way to end this segment. Is young people, if you don't like what your parents are doing, consult a lawyer. All right, hey Jenna, wonderful having you on. We do appreciate your many great insights and your take on these kind of things and the legal perspective, as well as the Christian perspective you bring to the issues we discuss with you. Anything you want to say about upcoming shows or podcasts that you want to maybe tease for listeners?
Well, obviously, everyone should be listening already to the morning show. We break down a lot of the headlines, and tomorrow I know that there is a couple of Supreme Court issues going on, including the redistricting case that was heard this morning, and then also the in my opinion, the wrongful denial of Alex Jones' appeal. So we're going to break that all down tomorrow morning, along with some other things. So definitely don't miss that.
All right. Thank you, Jenna.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
That was Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, heard weekdays at 7 a.m. Central Time on American Family Radio, and host of the on-demand podcast that you can find at afr.net. You can find other podcasts there at afr.net. If you look at the top, there are some drop-down menus you can click on. There is one that says podcast, and you click on that. All the podcasts that are available for you to stream or download and listen to later, you can do that right there at afr.net. All right, Chris.
Yes.
What else you got?
There was a Medal of Freedom ceremony yesterday at the White House in which President Donald Trump awarded Charlie Kirk the Medal of Freedom. His wife, or widow, Erica Kirk, accepted that medal. One of the people that was watching this, like a lot of us, is a young lady named Isabel Brown. Isabel used to work at TPUSA, prior to becoming her own podcaster. And she was on Fox today talking about the Medal of Freedom and the fact that she said Charlie deserved it. And then she went on to speak against the stereotypes of people that are Gen Z. Now, Gen Z, for those not aware, are people that were born in the late 1990s up until around 2012. And there are some stereotypes out there that Gen Zers are lazy, they're uninformed, they don't care about their country. Isabel says that's not true, and we've witnessed that since the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Here's more of what she had to say, clip 12.
You know, Gen Z gets a bad reputation for whatever reason. We're often called too young to know what we're talking about, that we're too leftist and woke and bought into all of the lies of the world. I don't see it that way, and I know Charlie didn't as well. Generation Z has an incredible weight on our shoulders, really to save Western civilization from the lies and the upside down woke leftism that we grew up in and we've been living through. Young people today are kind of universally wise beyond our years because we've had to, but we all got a really strong wake-up call this last month to understand that life is incredibly short. We are not afforded the luxury of 100 plus years to accomplish everything we know we can and to run the race that God has set before us. We may only get 31 years. So to know that tomorrow we can take the opportunity to wake up and live every day like it's our last, to tell the truth, even if our lives depend on it, and to try to make this world a little bit more like the next one, that is truly the greatest commission we each could receive. And I hope and pray that we continue to pick up that microphone in Charlie's honor in whatever sphere of influence we have.
Now, I can relate to what she's saying about how people are saying Gen Zers are uninformed, they don't care, these kinds of things, because society said the same thing about millennials when we were the young Americans that were new to the scene in the workforce.
About yourself, Chris.
Yes. So
Classic millennial thing to do.
Yeah, that's right. We went from the look at me generation to the me generation to the look at me, and now we're on the look at my selfies. But anyway, she makes great points here, and that's just something you don't hear enough about with young people.
What was her name again?
Isabel Brown.
Okay, Fred, that was great.
Is she a Gen Zer?
Yes. She's
and that's the age bracket what?
Late 1990s to around 2012.
Wow, I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
So age wise, that's like 27 and under.
Yes.
Kind of 27?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The new generation, but I have two kids. One of them is a Gen Z. The other is Generation Alpha. Why they're called that, I'm not sure.
Well, they're going all the way back to the beginning of the alphabet.
Yeah. We went from Gen Z or Gen X to millennials.
No, was Gen Y.
And
the forgotten generation.
And now we're starting over. But anyway.
I'm going to make a little chart for myself so I can keep up with this. And
I'll do that.
Adjust it every year. So that was well said.
Very impressed with that young lady. Mm. And I think we have to be careful about stereotyping age brackets.
Right.
Because quite often the people that make the news are the radicals from those various groups. But I thank the Lord. I mean, Charlie Kirk's group, Turning Point, demonstrates there are some wonderful kids coming up. It's encouraging.
And we have some here.
Yes.
At AFA and AFR.
Absolutely. So it's very encouraging to hear that. And we ought to be careful about stereotyping groups of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right? And instead encourage people within those groups, hey, listen, what you're doing is really good. How can I help you?
Yeah.
You know, Fox did an interview with a young lady this morning who was 18. She already owns 2 pizza restaurants.
I like her already.
What an entrepreneurial spirit. So it's a lesson about not boxing people. All right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a millennial, but I'm not like that one over there.
Right.
All right. So don't treat me like the negative images that were often given of various groups. I was so impressed with that young lady. That's why I asked about her age.
Yeah. And she went to college in Colorado, Colorado, of course, is where Jenna is from. So something's in the water there in Colorado, perhaps.
Well, and Tony, this is what conservatives say about like black people. We don't want to judge people by the color of their skin.
Right.
Okay. And that's why we are opposed to woke ideology, because you're assuming that all white people are alike or all black people are alike. Or all Hispanic people are alike, and we don't like it when the DEI folks do it. We shouldn't fall into that trap as well with young people.
Yeah, I am encouraged by a lot of what I'm seeing coming out of Gen Z. They're growing up in such an age of confusion, and radical ideologies, it's good to see young people navigating through that to find the truth,
Yeah.
and expressing and standing up boldly for it.
Yeah, and maybe they've been told to you're not allowed to say X, Y, and Z for so long that now maybe they're saying, you know what, I'm saying it.
Yeah.
And so good on them. Very impressive. Thanks for sharing that with us, Chris. All right, Chris, you're done.
Yes.
Steve Paisley-Jordahl will be in after the break. But that means we do have to take a 5-minute break for news. And when we return, more of today's issues. You're listening to the American Family Radio Network.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Sometimes being an insider means you understand the joke that only certain ones really know. Other times, it gets you into exclusive places. As an AFA insider, you'll get information about issues and policies that can dramatically impact our families and our Christian rights. And you won't have to travel to D.C. or even dress up to get it. Find out more and sign up at afa.net/activism.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Excitement and hope in Israel and the Middle East. Fox's Trey Yingst has more from Tel Aviv.
The mood is a mood of elation across Israel following this successful peace agreement that led to the release of 20 living hostages. The Israeli people waited for more than 2 years, and they were promised back during the Biden administration that this war would come to an end, that negotiators would find a solution, and it just didn't happen. And it dragged on and on until President Trump sent his Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner with a mission to get the deal across the finish line. And so there has been a mood of celebration. Last night, there was the end of the Jewish holiday of Sukkot with a holiday called Simchat Torah. And you could see in the streets of Tel Aviv, people were dancing, they were holding Torahs. And it was a mood that we'd not seen here since the October 7th massacre. And you do get this sense of relief among the Israeli people because they've been waiting for this moment. And so there are still difficult days ahead. You heard reminders from the families of the hostages who came out saying, don't give up yet. There are still 21 bodies being held by Hamas. But there's an understanding that the Middle East has entered into a new chapter. And despite the challenging days ahead and the challenges that will come with trying to implement phase 2 of this broader peace plan, there is hope in the Middle East for the first time in so long.
The peace deal between Israel and Hamas is the cover story for Time magazine, and Time put a picture of President Trump on the cover. But Trump's not a fan of the photo, saying it's a terrible picture of him. Columnist Joe Concha agrees.
I don't get the picture. I mean, there's 1,000 photos you could take of President Trump, and in this case, I don't understand why they went with something like that. So even here, when he achieves what you could call, as far as his legacy, one of the greatest achievements he'll be remembered for as a president, as far as peace in Gaza and getting Hamas to step down as far as governing that area, I don't get the photo.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration continues to go after what it's calling narco-terrorists. These are drug dealers in boats that the Trump administration is blowing up in the water. Not everyone's a fan, saying this is not something the federal government should be involved with, but Mark Dubovitz of the Foundation for Defense of Democracy supports the president's actions.
Israel has taken the fight to Hamas and Hezbollah and Iranian Revolutionary Guard terrorists. The Trump administration is taking the fight to these narco-terrorists who are responsible for over 100,000 American deaths a year from fentanyl and meth and heroin, cocaine. These are terrorists. These finally are being treated not as a law enforcement problem, but as a problem of counterterrorism. So I'm pleased to see the Trump administration doing this and using military force against these killers of Americans.
Meta has removed a Facebook page used to track the presence of immigration agents at the request of the Department of Justice, or DOJ. Meta said in a statement that the group, quote, was removed for violating policies against coordinated harm. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments today on a redistricting case that may have a lasting effect on the Federal Voting Rights Act. Here's Fox's Gernal Scott.
Lawyers will argue Louisiana v. Calais, a case that asks the question, did Louisiana lawmakers in 2024 rely too much on race to create a second majority black congressional district? Black voters sued in 2022 when the state legislature created one majority-minority district, even though Louisiana's population was then one-third black. A group of so-called non-African Americans countersued. The Supreme Court heard this case back in March, but did not decide on it before their last term ended. The justices ordered the case reheard in order to address additional issues.
In final news, people are still talking about that Medal of Freedom ceremony in honor of slain TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk. Charlie's widow, Erica, accepted the medal.
I have spent 7.5 years trying to find the perfect birthday gift for Charlie. He wasn't a materialistic man, so that also did not help. But now I can say with confidence, Mr. President, that you have given him the best birthday gift.
And that's all our time for now. Find more news on afn.net. Thanks for listening.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We stand on the biblical truth that all human beings, including the unborn, are created in the image of God and are endowed by Him with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon this week. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Tony Vitagliano. And now Steve Paisley-Jordahl joins us.
Hello, everybody.
And I did promise to mention this in our story meeting. He is not in Paisley today. He has a shirt on. I liked it. I complimented the shirt. It looks like a piano keyboard.
Yeah, kind of a contemporary version of piano keyboard.
Yeah, and then Fred ruined it because he said it looks like syringes and it looks like a COVID shirt.
Yeah.
And now I can't unsee that.
Well, I didn't wear the Paisley new shirt and everything. I felt like 3 days in a row was kind of loosening you from your moorings. I didn't want to keep going down that road.
Well, let me just assure you, I have been afloat, loosened from my moorings for decades.
Yeah, so. Stephen Colbert has 10 of those shirts. Remember the vaccine skit he did? Yeah,
yes.
It reminds me of the people dressed up as syringes dancing around a show. Oh my God. People forget about that. Yeah.
That was a bizarre moment in television history.
Actually, I have second thoughts about what those things look like.
Now what?
They look like dental instruments.
Dental. I liked your first take.
Yeah.
Dental instruments.
Yeah, I see little hooks on the end there.
I'm sticking with piano.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So,
all right.
Anyway, I just want to let you know I initially liked your shirt.
Thank you.
Now Fred has ruined it.
I know. So. Great.
All right. You're up.
All right. I'd like to introduce you all to Aaron Spencer. The voters of Lonoke County, Arkansas, have a decision to make in front of them. Aaron Spencer is running for sheriff of Lonoke County. He is also scheduled to appear in court on second-degree murder charges. How in the world does a guy that's going to be running for sheriff end up in court or vice versa? This is how it happened. In 2024, Spencer woke up to find his 14-year-old daughter missing from her bedroom. She had put a stuffed animal in a hoodie and put it under the blankets and everything. He goes looking for her, and he finds her in the front seat of a truck with a gentleman named Michael Fosler. Now, he was familiar with Michael Fosler because Michael Fosler had been accused and had been charged with more than 40 sex crimes, many perpetrated against Spencer's daughter, the 14-year-old girl that he was with at the time. He ran the car off the road, shot the guy dead, and now is facing, it was first-degree murder charges. They've lowered that to second-degree murder charges. And he is running for sheriff of Lonoke County in order to fix a broken system. If you guys out and he had a protection order against this guy. If he's out after 40 times and he's not behind bars, there's a system to be fixed.
All right, so the person who was shot.
Yes.
Fosler?
67-year-old Michael Fosler, Fosler.
Okay. He had a order against him to stay away from this man's, what's the sheriff's name again?
Aaron Spencer.
Spencer's daughter?
Sheriff potential sheriff.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's true. All right, now, first of all, let me just say, folks, it's not our place to get involved in this election. That's
correct.
This is the county, the folks in Arkansas, they're going to have to make this decision. We did talk about this issue, Fred, because we regularly cover on this show how the system in many places in the U.S. is broken, clearly broken. Usually it's blue cities in blue states where people with a long rap sheet are out on the street. They commit a crime. Now, this particular case, this man, Fosler, had not yet, if I'm not mistaken, been convicted of these charges. But clearly, with a protective order, something should have been done to keep this man away from Spencer's 14-year-old daughter. So I'm tossing this hot potato to you first, because we talked about this morning about what every father in the country probably would have done, and yet we do have a system of law and order where you don't want to encourage people to take the law into their own hands. What say you?
Well, let me just say that the people in this county are going to have to decide with regards to the election. I think if he's elected sheriff of that county, what the people of that good county are saying is that we can sympathize with his dad as to what he did. Now, the flip side of all of that is if we were to say he was justified in taking the life of another man, that's where the argument takes a different voice. Because if you say he was justified in taking this man's life, we understand his anger. It's just horrible what happened. But if we say he was justified in doing that, you are opening up a Pandora's box of controversy as far as then you go to part B. So are you saying anybody who is really angry over something that happened to a family member has a right to go out and do this? And I would say no, certainly not. We have a system. Now the system is badly broken.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
And even when it works, it oftentimes works slowly.
Yes.
So people may be very angry on Monday, and now they're contemplating maybe 18 months before they get some justice. Maybe they're encouraged to end the problem on Tuesday.
Yes.
And that becomes an issue.
Yes. So like I say, it's going to be up to the people to decide, but I can see the prosecution in the case having a tough time finding, I'm not sure how big this county is, finding a jury that everybody on there is saying, yeah, I don't know too much about this case.
Right.
So it's going to be an interesting one to watch, but I think we have to be very careful. We can sympathize with the dad, but we have to be very careful in saying, yes, he was justified.
All right, Tony, you got 5 kids. 2 of them are daughters.
I might need to sit this one out. No, I mean, I think it's the fact that this man was still walking around, having been charged with up to 40 counts of sexual assault crimes of various kinds, just goes to show how far our system has fallen. So yes, you can say no system is perfect, right? Everybody could say throughout history, well, the system is imperfect. Absolutely. But I think it's gotten more imperfect is the only way I can describe it, so that you end up with situations like this where people tend to take matters into their own hands, and that is a symptom, not a cause. So I think that's kind of where we're at with this situation. Perhaps his charges will be dropped to no murder, and no murder degree. That would be a situation I wouldn't be too sad about. We just try and be as political, as tactful about this as possible.
All right, Steve, you brought this story up, so you're going to have to go on the record.
Well, I was wondering if it could be argued, and I have a daughter, and I would feel exactly the same way. Could it be argued that you got to make sure I get the names right. That could it be argued that Mr. Fosler was in the process of committing the 41st act of sexual violence against his daughter, and by shooting him, he was stopping a crime from happening?
Yeah.
Certainly, if I was a lawyer, and none of us are lawyers, but if I was a lawyer, and that would probably be one of my tacts I'd consider.
Look, I'll say this: this little girl there was no due process for her. She didn't get to decide whether these acts were committed against her or not, if I had to get. And I mean, with the 40 charges, I'm assuming there were lots of
evidence.
Lots of evidence. So that's one thing that I think an aspect of an imperfect system is that, for instance, Luigi Mangione, he shot and killed father and husband, the United Healthcare CEO. He's getting due process, and the due process is going to drag out for years, and there's going to be charges dropped. There's going to be appeals made. You know who didn't get due process?
Mm-hmm.
The father and the husband, the CEO who was shot and killed. That's to me. I understand the system is doing what it was designed to do, which is to give due process and a fair trial before your peers. I understand that, but there are certain situations, I think, where it tends to drag on too much.
My opinion on this is, and this is the part that's broken, it's not just the length of time, it's that if a person is credibly charged with 40 counts, that person should not be walking around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That person should be in jail. The Constitution guarantees a fair and speedy trial. So part of this is you can't drag this out for 18 months unless it's the defense attorney who's dragging it out. But a person who has 40 counts should not be walking around.
Right.
That, to me, is step one, and that's the problem we're seeing in blue cities all over the country. People with long rap sheets, and now part of this is judges who are corrupt. In my opinion, they're corrupt not in terms of bribery, but in terms of their understanding of law. You have prosecutors who are George Soros-type prosecutors that think the system has failed these charged criminals, therefore they should be out on the street. But somebody with 40 counts of an egregious crime, we're not talking about 40 speeding tickets here. We're talking about 40 charges of these kind of heinous crimes. That person should be in jail and not walking around, because they could go and do something else.
Right.
Now, I'm guessing also this 14-year-old probably wasn't kidnapped from
She was
her.
groomed.
She was groomed. Yeah. But the way the system works, and in this case it is right, 14-year-old is not consenting, even if she says she's consenting,
right.
because she's been groomed. But she is out. She is still a victim who is vulnerable,
right.
An alleged victim. Okay, I want to make that. Fosler shouldn't have been out.
Right, I agree.
And that's the first step in correcting this kind of thing. And guess what? If he wasn't out, then the girl wouldn't have been in his car, and the father wouldn't have found him, and in absolute insanity of anger, likely wouldn't have had the opportunity to kill him.
I have a feeling if Mr. Spencer wins the election, the next Mr. Fosler will not be out.
Well, that'll be up to the prosecutor and the judge.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the frustration for law enforcement is they arrest these people and then they see them right back out in the street at the local Dairy Queen.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Yeah, I'm getting wound up. So we need to move on.
John Solomon, an excellent private reporter, an excellent reporter, not aligned with any network, but independent reporter is what I'm trying to say. He is reporting that the FBI was offered 30 million lines of phone mapping data by Representative Adam Kinzinger in relationship to the January 6th Capitol riots.
Now explain. I'm not sure I understand that. Say that again.
The FBI was offered 30 million lines of phone data by former Representative Adam Kinzinger, who's one of his aides found or collected the data, and he was offering it to the FBI in hopes of helping them prosecute the January 6th attacks. 30 million lines of data. Now, the data did not include conversations, but it did include length of calls, numbers they were calling, locations, where were you standing when you made the phone call, if it's from a cell phone. So, and what this is bringing up, 30 million lines of data that's got to be a lot of people that they had under investigations. Bringing up some civil rights complaints. Does the FBI, certainly they didn't get warrants on however many thousands of people it took to generate 30 million lines of data.
So, but the FBI accepted these.
The memo did not reveal whether the Bureau ever took Kinzinger up on the offer, but it does reveal, according to John Solomon, the sheer magnitude of a formed surveillance project the Democrats ran by using congressional subpoenas to gather phone records about Americans' contact with the Trump White House.
All right. So, Fred, I'm going to bring something up, and Tony, you can follow up. I don't know where we're going to wind up going in this country in protecting civil rights and preventing us from living in an all-out surveillance state. But it seems to me, if I remember right, after January 6th, the FBI showed up at a lot of doorsteps saying, we know you were around the Capitol because your phone pinged, okay? We know you were there.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to ask you what you were doing there.
Yep.
Okay? And I have no idea legally what you can charge people with just because they were around the Capitol. Maybe they were able to tell if they were in the Capitol, okay? But the fact is, with facial recognition software and you bought a chalupa at the local Taco Bell. We know that because we got – I'm not sure if there's even a right to privacy in existence. And then I'll toss it to Tony as well.
Yeah, when I was growing up, there was no talk of Ring cameras.
Right.
Which they use now. There are cameras everywhere. Pull up to an intersection in any size city, and you got a blue camera looking at you.
Yeah.
And again, the argument, but that's just for your own safety.
Yeah, because they do use it to catch killers.
Well,
it probably even caught Charlie Kirk's alleged killer.
Yeah, or if there's a traffic accident, you can go to the cameras and say, okay, it was Party B's fault, not Party A's.
Yeah.
So we're glad about that. People are installing cameras in their car to protect them from, if there's a collision out there. So we welcome all of these things, but the price you pay for all of these things is that some unscrupulous individual in prosecution and in this case, the Biden FBI, whatever, they can use these things to create a scenario.
Right.
Because you were at the donut shop. We know you were there. I remember in the wake of January the 6th, there was a family, I think, that was in Washington at that time. They lived in Alaska. And the FBI came and knocked on their door like 2 or 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
And saying, we want to talk to you. And we want, by the way, we want your phones and your laptop may have been used, all of those sorts of things. So that's where it gets scary. So society is going to have to understand, are we going to put limits on Ring cameras and all of these sorts of things? Or are we going to weigh it and say, no, we need these kinds of things? Like I said, when I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have cameras like that, all those sorts of things. But as I say, there are arguments for and against, and it gets pretty scary when you have – the problem here is not the cameras.
Right.
The problem here is the corrupt people who take that information and they politicize it and saying, we find out that George is a Republican, I'm going to go after them.
Yeah, because your chances of winning against the full might of the federal government, if they target you, are slim to none. And even if you do win, you're bankrupt. All right, Tony.
The more disturbing part of this story, Steve, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this was members of Congress who were offering this data. I don't know how, first of all, they acquired 30 million records of phone data and contacts, but they're the ones offering it to the FBI. Now, if I had to guess, I didn't say whether it says the FBI accepted it or not. Does it say, Steve? Whether
it does not reveal whether they accepted it. And to answer your first question, the data had been collected by then former Representative Denver Riggleman, an ex-Republican who was a staffer on Capitol Hill riot committee and who later helped Hunter Biden's legal team in its efforts to cast doubt on the laptop belonging to Joe Biden's son.
Well, that tracks. So if I had to guess, the FBI probably didn't accept it because they're like, we've already got this. I mean, we've already got this data. It's worthless. But that to me disturbs me because now you have these former Republicans. I use quotes there, and you got Kinzinger. You got these Democrats wanting to play cops and robbers and help catch, some January 6th insurrectionists. I just want to know how they got that information because to me, yes, the FBI, I don't agree with it. Their use of warrants or sometimes warrantless acquisitions of information and data, but I certainly don't want members of Congress, most of whom are, couldn't pass a fifth grade history test, going out collecting information on